Hey everyone, welcome to the Techstrong gang. I'm Alan Schimmel, CEO founder of Techstrong, and the Techstrong gang, if you haven't caught it before, is our new morning segments first segments, whether you listen to it in the morning, the afternoon, or the evening. It's our first segment of our Techstrong TV broadcast every day. I'm joined by our Techstrong gang, and it's kind of a revolving list of some of our key editorial and leadership here at Techstrong Group. And going forward, we'll be joined by some of our kind of Techstrong friends and family who bring their own expertise to so many subjects, and we'll be bringing them in the days and weeks ahead. For today, though, our Techstrong gang is made up of Mike Vizard, our Chief Content Officer here at Techstrong. And joining us is Amanda Rizzini. Amanda is an editor also here at Techstrong, primarily on Techstrong.ai and Digital CXO. So we'll have some emphasis and focus on that. And then last but not least is my usual co-host on All Things Video, our CTO and Principal Techstrong Research Analyst, Mitchell Ashley. Amanda, Mitchell, welcome.
Great to be here. Good day, everybody.
Yes. So if you haven't caught Techstrong Gang before, and you may not have, there's only been one other Techstrong Gang episode, and that was yesterday's show. We're going to talk about some hot topics, some of which are featured in our various Techstrong publications, and some of which will be, just current events in the tech world, because the kind of special sauce here at Techstrong is we all live and breathe tech. We specialize in DevOps and cybersecurity and digital transformation, cloud native, and now AI. But we're geeks, just like you are. And what we think is interesting, we're hoping you're going to think is interesting as well. So anything's game for that. And by the way, if you have a subject that you'd like to see us discuss on Techstrong Gang, send an email over to techstronggang@techstronggroup.com, and we'll get it over to our producers and see if we can put it in. Anyway, with that said, let's dive right in here. Mike, if you want to kick us off.
Let's get started with something that was on Techstrong.ai. So I know Amanda's close to this subject, but I know we've all talked about this in the past and how we feel about it. But EY had an interesting survey where they found that 71% of workers are getting a little concerned about the impact of AI in the workforce, and half of them are more anxious about it now than they were a year ago. I don't think that comes as a surprise, but I think what's worth talking about here is I feel like there's a distinct lack of leadership when it comes to AI among the business executives. They're all kind of sitting there going, well, this is going to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but they're not really working through what's the impact on their business, what's going to be automated, what's going to be changed. I feel like everybody's kind of just stumbling along here, and I think that's going to end badly. Maybe you have a different perspective on it. I know we talk about this all the time.
Yes, we do. So, as I think I mentioned yesterday, Mitchell and I were just back from a quick little trip up to Boston where we met with 8 to 10 companies there, Techstrong customers and players in the market. And, while we're all hearing about the season of layoffs and all of this thing, I will tell you that consistently we heard that AI is coming on fast and strong, and it's not going to replace quality employees. It's going to empower them, but they are, I don't think they're stumbling and bumbling. I think they're just looking for the right openings for what AI can do. We spoke yesterday about, does AI write crappy code? It writes code. Does AI write good marketing material? I think it does. The question is, I think what we're seeing now and why people are kind of antsy about it is we kind of know what it can do now, but we haven't connected the dots to how people will use that in their jobs. And so anytime there's uncertainty, people freak out, right? So I think that's what we're seeing right now is we haven't connected the AI capabilities to the specific tasks that people are going to use it for. And I think that's a temporary thing.
Mitch, what's your take? Because I know you've been playing around with some efforts to operationalize AI, and sometimes it works and sometimes not so good.
Sometimes needs a little more help than others, but yes, it's very effective. It's interesting. I think what's unique about AI, because of generative AI and how that's sort of slammed onto the scene, it's like a hurricane that just came ashore, right? Which would relatable to our folks in Florida, right? Is that it's present in the workplace, and some business leaders are saying, how much that's going to replace their workforce, and we don't need people to do this, and so you hear that about the work environment. Not everybody is saying that, but it was a lot of the initial reaction. We also live in a culture of science fiction around AI, right? We see all the dystopian movies where AI is taken over, and AI Creator that was on Hulu recently, a great little movie that they have there. So it's part of our lives too, and we're not really sure about what this means. The robot's going to take over, et cetera. But I think in the workplace, what most of us are learning, and that's, I think the emphasis is this learning, is how to apply it, where we can use it to, as Alan was saying, is it good at marketing material? Yeah, it is if you learn how to prompt it correctly, and then you edit it and kind of get it into final form. Same thing if you're doing research and you're looking for a subject, or you're trying to write an abstract, or even writing code. It does a decent job of a lot of those things, but it's not autonomous. So today it's a we use the word co-pilot, but it's more than that. It's a augmentation companion kind of tool that's part of our work, like we would use a Grammarly or a dictionary editing kind of tool.
Amanda, I'd love to get your take, because this is an election year, and I'm pretty sure that somewhere along the line this is going to become a pocketbook issue for the election, because a lot of people are anxious, and somebody's going to seize on this, and probably somebody with a more populist bent than perhaps others, and say, this is a threat to our way of life. And so are we going to see this as kind of become a campaign issue as we get further into the election cycle? I mean, what do you hear and what do you expect?
Well, absolutely, because it's already happening. We saw with the robocalls and the FCC having to come in and make some regulations on calling those illegal. I'm getting a lot of robocalls and text messages that I know are coming in from AI that are politically motivated. So it's definitely a concern there, just people not knowing who's actually calling them to try to persuade them to change their vote. And then on the other end is interference in the actual election. So we have two different concerns there.
So what's your take? Do you think we're going to see, it's pretty clear it's going to be a Biden-Trump election. Will they start seizing on this? What do you think?
You think so? Look, there's good uses of it and bad uses of it. You want to have AI do robocalls because it's cheaper, more effective than having volunteers or paid people doing it. Have at it. If you're going to use AI, though, to imitate your opponent or to spread misinformation and that kind of thing, obviously that's a no-no. The question is, how do you tell the difference? And it's going to take, there's always a gap from technology innovation to society mores, right? To society learning how to deal with it and, ingesting it, if you will, digesting it. And we haven't caught up there. I saw an article yesterday that I think it was Google and some other companies have come up with a thing where they're going to identify and label AI-generated content, right? If it's not already labeled as such. I think we're going to need similar kind of stuff when you get on the phone call, right? That this is labeled AI-generated. And
that's DALL-E 2 said they're putting watermarks in their images and things like that.
DALL-E,
so they're starting to do that, right?
So
I saw those come through. I made some marketing graphics, and when I posted them, it was showing my prompt engineering code on the image.
Yeah, but I think we have to.
Well, let's take that to our next subject then, because we are looking at all these deep fakes, right? And frankly, I'm not sure that we do know right now what's human created and what's...
No, we certainly don't know right now. That's the problem.
And we have, everybody from Taylor Swift to some poor CFO fella had his staff send $26 million to somewhere because somebody put a deep fake together in Asia, and next thing you know, like there's a check that went out the door.
It wasn't the CFO. It was the poor son of a gun who worked at the bank who thought he
it
was
was a
talking
branch
to the
manager.
CFO.
Yeah. There were like 3 videos, I guess, of
this was a
deepfake
story
people.
Richie Jennings did, covered, by the way, I believe, on the Boulevard, on Security Boulevard. And for those who aren't familiar, you can check it out, but on Security Boulevard. But in essence, a video call was made to a branch manager at a bank with a deep fake of the CFO of the company telling him they wanted to do something a little out of the ordinary and wire $26 million to an account. And normally the branch manager wouldn't have done it because it was out of the ordinary. But there was the guy, in full color and sound in front of him telling him it was okay. And he wasn't able to, he couldn't tell the difference between the deep fake and a real person. Guys, if it's happening now, look, in 6 months, you're never going to be able to, it's only going to get better and harder to, to identify these things. So we've got to do something.
I think part of this issue is, I can look at it 2 ways. One is, I think people will become more skeptical of what they're looking at because they'll hear these stories and they'll know that everything out there is not to be immediately believed. So that's probably a good thing. The other side of it, though, is they won't believe anything. And then they'll just sit there and say, well, it's all nonsense. And, then they'll go into their own little rabbit hole and start imagining all kinds of things that probably aren't true either. So I feel like there's kind of 2 extremes we need to navigate as a society here. But again, I'm just wondering who's in charge, because I'm not seeing it.
I think, again, it's the gap where we need to catch up to the technology. I had a thing, it's not AI related, but I'm sitting at dinner last night. I get a call from, bank fraud department to question me about a transaction. I said, well, I'm in the middle of dinner, but I could answer it for you. What transaction are you talking about? Oh, we can't tell you that. I said, well, it's going to be hard for me to, say if it's good or bad. If you don't, well, before we could tell you, but first you got to go through the ringer. So, from social security number to date of birth to all of that. Then they said, okay, we're going to ask some questions about your past and make sure you answer correctly. And they're giving me list of addresses. Have you lived at any one of these? None of these? All of them. What car have you driven? What's your shoe size? What's your height on your driver's license? And I get it because it's hard. They wanted to verify it. In fact, it was me. Finally, I said to the lady, though, ma'am, if you've got any more questions, you're going to have to call me back after dinner because I'm holding up my whole family's dinner here while you're asking me questions, and I could probably answer the heart of the question in about 3 seconds, right? And she said, well, luckily that was the last one. And she then asked me about the transaction. I said, yes, it's fine. She said, thank you. I said, I don't want to talk anymore. She was still talking. And I said, thank you again, and hung up. That's the problem you run into here, right? Is it going to stop the ambulance from getting to you on time because they want to make sure you're in fact having a real heart attack?
All right. Without giving away where Amanda lives, but you're out in the heartland out there, what are you hearing from folks?
Yes, well, I was going to say to your issue, I think that's where biometrics may come into play. If we can, go that route, then we may have less of those issues. And I think that we will have to go that direction.
You're saying biometrics can't be faked by AI?
Well, I think it might be a little harder to do so.
Okay.
I think some level of signature or authentication, if you're an election worker and somebody sends you something, you need to verify. I mean, what was that Ronald Reagan used to say? Trust but verify. Maybe we do need some sort of capability that looks that way, but then we're already suffering from multi-factor authentication fatigue, and it's easy to relatively hack. So we need a different approach. Mitch, you're the technology guy. What's out there that can solve this problem?
What's out there? Blockchain, that'll solve it all. No, I'm just kidding. But it pushes to some form of digital identity, right? So that you can identify the physical identity with the digital identity, whether you're talking over the phone or we're back to the phishing days, right? When phishing was new and anybody and everybody would click on any link, even if the email looked terrible. Well, now, the videos and the robocalls and fake stuff looks real. I think we're going to have a rough period of time for the next at least couple of years, because there isn't anything on the horizon of this will solve it. And if you'll just sign up for this, go to this Lifeline service and that'll solve all your problems. I don't think so. So I don't know. I'm very concerned about it, actually.
I did an interview. I'm sorry, go ahead, Mitch.
No, I was saying where there's a problem, there's an opportunity, right? We'll see what emerges.
I did an interview, I guess it was, I think it played on Techstrong TV this week with Sandy Carter, former SVP at IBM and then AWS. She's with a new company now. I want Unstoppable Domains, Unsomething Domains, right? And this is these W3 domains, right? Web3 domains. You can have one letter, you can have your name, and it's .x or .whatever. And it actually, Mitch does use blockchain to store your data that would help you verify is in fact you. And this is going to help with, I hate to use the word Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, but it's good for crypto, but it's good for other ID as well. And that may, it's early yet, but this W3, Web3, may in fact wind up being the identity verification, at least for stuff, right? For online stuff, that, because of blockchain is valid.
Well, we will see how that goes. Do we want to take a break or go to the next story?
Yes, before we go to our next block, we got to pay some bills. So we're going to take a quick 30-second break here, and we'll be right back with the Techstrong gang.
Discover the cutting-edge insights of our new show, AI Times, a series that explores the limitless potential of artificial intelligence. Sponsored by the AI Infrastructure Alliance, the AI Times is at the forefront of the AI revolution, tackling the crucial questions of how we can leverage AI for the betterment of humanity. Stay ahead of the curve as this show delves into all things surrounding AI, including trends, pressing concerns, and the positive impact AI is making around the globe. AI Times.
All right, guys, we're back and we're moving on to our next topic, which is agile development, because...
Actually, Mike, before we jump on agile development, I wanted to mention something, speaking of paying bills and so forth. Hey, you know what? Here at Techstrong, we've got a full slate of both virtual events and in-person events we're going to be either producing or at broadcasting, and we'll be doing Techstrong Gang at some of them. I want to call to your attention Techstrong Con. I think this will be the 4th year of Techstrong Con. It's one of our flagships. It's about all things digital transformation this year. We've got some great speakers, great lineup. It is, I believe, April 3rd. It'll take up most of the day. If you go to TechstrongEvents.com, you can go to Techstrong Con there and register for it. Registration and attendance is, of course, free. Also, the month after that, we will be at RSA Conference again. And RSA Conference is, of course, the biggest cybersecurity show in the world. And for the 8th or 9th year, we're going to be putting on our DevSecOps event. And this year, it's DevSecOps and AI. We've got an amazing lineup of speakers, including David Brin, famed sci-fi author, NASA JPL PhD, and futurist keynoting, as well as security folks from Meta, OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, and more. So RSA, again, go to TechstrongEvents.com. You can get the scoop on that. I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No worries. In fact, this next topic has a lot to do with what's going on at Techstrong Con, because we're talking about modernization and digital transformation, and a lot of that, of course, requires agile development. But Mitch, I'm going to throw this your way. This survey done by our friends over at digital.ai, it's their 17th, I think, and basically it finds that, much to your surprise, I'm sure, that agile is not scaling and we're having issues and people are not reading the manifesto correctly. So why is this, and how come we're still having this problem entering into, coming up on 2 decades now?
It's interesting. Alan and I were just talking yesterday, this whole week, about DevOps and its maturity curve and adoption, and Agile. It's still around. It's still alive and well, though we don't talk about it as much. I mean, the first thing I was kind of struck by is 71% of the respondents out of almost 800 said they're using Agile development with their organization, and 44% said that's working well, 11% somewhat, and the rest is kind of we'll see. So they cited a number of reasons. I don't think any of them are any big surprise, but people are trying to figure out, how do I trace what's happening end to end across my software development cycle? Should sound familiar, whether we're talking about value stream management or we're talking about DevOps or Agile. And they're looking for, how do we measure cycle time? How do we measure wait time? Where are their bottlenecks? Continuous testing, all these same kind of things we talk about in DevOps. And I think because there's a lot of, DevOps is building off of a lot of what Agile does. I think it's just the normal software development lifecycle issues that everyone wrestles with. There is no perfect, we've all got it honed and it works 99% of the time and we can see access into anything, and it's changing. Tools are changing. I can't get to the right data to see where that is, or I can't correlate it across tools. There's a variety of factors. So, I'm just pleased to see people are doing it and they're using it. But the struggles are real, man.
Nothing is perfect. Mm-hmm. But like they say about democracy, right? It's the best of the worst, or the best of the rest.
It's messy business.
And it's a messy business. Agile can be messy too, but it's better than a lot of other things out there. But as I've grown older, one of the things I've learned is using the right tool for the job. And I would bet that most of the not most, but a lot of the problems that are cited in this report are, maybe Agile wasn't the right tool for that particular job, right? I don't think Agile is the right thing to use for every single instance of software development, depending on what the project is. On the other hand, though, I also think people like to complain about things. Agile's 25 years old. It's relatively, matured. I think you can't please all the people all the time.
I think there was one other interesting stat in here where it said only 36% have their DevOps teams working together as one team. And I don't know if that's a reasonable goal. I feel like there was always going to be different teams, and maybe, we had this notion that DevOps needed to be enterprise-wide, and I scratch my head and I go, I think DevOps is like water in these different organizations, and I think McVitie was the first one to kind of make that claim a couple of years ago, where he noted every organization, DevOps and Agile, it's like water. It finds its own level, and it has to be tweaked by the organization. There is no perfect DevOps implementation, and it's unlikely there'll ever be a single DevOps team inside a large organization either. I don't know. Mitch, what do you think?
Well, there's an interesting difference between DevOps and Agile. Agile is still a methodology, right? There's the Black Book, there's Scrum, there's the SAFe scaled Agile framework that you can use. DevOps is like you said, it's really open-ended and self-defined and based on some principles that are shared with Agile, but it's also about automation and cycle time and a number of other things. So what I found, as I get older, to use Alan's description, I realize one of the biggest factors that determined success or failure in my own experience, and I had plenty of failures, is the DNA of the organization. How does it work? Are we a numbers-driven organization? Are we an ideas-driven organization? How does the organization function? And when you try to plug in a methodology, whether it's agile, or you try to plug in DevOps, an approach for developing software, you can go by the script, but that could be counter to how your organization works. So you have to figure out, well, if we're numbers driven, then let's start out by measuring and find the right things to measure so we know if we're headed down the right path, versus some evangelist might be in the organization to help you implement it. But that oftentimes, the more resistance you create, the bigger the problem you'll have. The more flow you create, not to go to value stream management, but the more you make it easier, the better you'll have adopting. But that's different across all teams. If everybody does it their own way, okay, that's all right. It'll be flexible, but it won't be the same. And you'll have trouble kind of comparing numbers and scaling it.
All right. Well,
and I think communication is key and at the root of everything. And often I see that being the biggest issue is communication between teams.
I think, of course, as I get younger and you guys get older, I think AI is going to play a big role here in this sense. It might help democratize AI to the point where I don't need as many, very high-end software engineering expertise to implement it, and it can be a little more automated. And I also think that means that more smaller companies that previously wouldn't have attempted it because it was just too complex an endeavor will embrace it as a methodology for building software. We may see more companies building software in the age of AI. So despite the issues raised here, I remain optimistic about the whole thing. I just feel like we need to set expectations correctly, because too often I find when I'm talking to especially researchers, they're like, oh my God, it's not everywhere. And I'm like, it's not supposed to be everywhere. So,
what?
Go ahead, Mitch.
I was just going to make a connection to what Mike was saying about AI. I think one of the potential connections of many is user stories are a big part of Agile, right? And that's business or product people definition of what the capabilities that they want the team to do in the next cycle. And that's a great thing to plug into AI, right? Generative AI, generate me code. Here's my story. Here's my user story. So I think there's a nice connection to that into a generated code or assisted code development that we'll probably see pretty quick. I think that's a great thing to start with.
Interesting. So I don't think AI replaces the higher end developers. I think it replaces the lower end, the people who, low code, no code kind of stuff. I think the higher end developers are going to harness AI to be 10x. But, look, we can make bets now, I don't know who's going to be the judge or the casino to pay them off or collect them when we have answers.
Two things to your point, Alan. One is AI isn't good at architecting systems and designing software architectures for your application, right? That's what architects do. Just like, when you generate a good marketing piece out of generative AI, you still need a person to say, yeah, that is good. AI doesn't know if it's good or bad, right? So I agree with you. I think the higher skilled functions are the ones that stick around, but they also change as AI becomes assisted to. I think it's the entry level. So the entry into this with AI tools means younger folks, people getting into this field, are probably going to be a lot more productive, a lot faster.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Like I said, I think we'll have to see how it plays out.
I think there's going to be a betting parlor in Las Vegas next year where we can go make these bets today. I mean, you can bet on anything today. So
you know what? Maybe Mitchell could build the app and we'll make it a Techstrong thing.
All right.
I think we just licensed one. There's a lot of them out there.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe call Martin. But
exactly.
Anyway, interesting stuff. Mike, do we have any other segments for today?
Those are our three for the moment, but yesterday you promised everybody a surprise topic.
Yes, so my surprise topic today, VMware, right? For those of us of an age, I'm not saying we're old, or young. But, VMware in many ways was the catalyst of the cloud, right? Because if you didn't have the hypervisor and the virtualization, you really couldn't run cloud. I tried in the late 90s with an ASP company, no cloud, no virtualization, single tenant applications.
It's called hosting.
Hosting. Well, we were an ASP, an application service provider. But really, hypervisor and VMware being probably the most successful of them, pioneered the modern cloud and the modern way, infrastructure as code and all of these things. Not infrastructure as code, infrastructure as a service, IaaS. Now, of course, we all know VMware's had a twisted history, right? Spun out of EMC, brought back into EMC. EMC gets bought by Dell. Dell spins out VMware eventually. VMware becomes a whale of a company in the tech world. Recently, the Broadcom acquisition closed. And there are a lot of people who are saying, well, what's the future here of VMware? Is Broadcom going to keep it the way we know? Are there going to be significant changes? Is there going to be brain drain? Is this, that, and the other thing? And so I'm seeing no lack of articles around, what to do if you're a VMware customer now. One of the ones I actually just read before coming in here was Dell ended their special relationship with VMware 2 years early. It was supposed to run till 2026. They ended it because there was a clause on change of ownership that they gave them an out. Dell represented about 40% of VMware sales went through Dell. Mm-hmm. That's a significant amount. We're having people, and God bless our editorial team for keeping standards up, who, they're kind of the leeches on the system who say, hey, run from VMware right to our product, right? And we're not going to run that kind of stuff. But there are plenty of people out there making that argument. I think, there's a lot of fear and doubt about if you're a VMware user, what your Tanzu user, vSphere, et cetera, what's your short-term, long-term plan here?
I think, we're toning it down, but you got to give fair play to everybody. So Nutanix and Verge.io are probably the two biggest companies making the most noise about what's going on with VMware and the turmoil, but the turmoil is real. And the issue is they killed the perpetual licenses for customers. So they're clearly trying to shift everybody over to a subscription model, and people aren't quite clear if that's good or bad for them, and they don't know for sure, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And I'm sure the folks over at Red Hat are watching this whole thing closely.
Oh, sure. I think OpenShift could be the big winner there.
Right. And you're also starting to see, the Amazons and Microsofts and Googles of the world gently saying to folks, well, maybe you should move to a hypervisor in the cloud that we already provide. So there's a lot of noise in the system, no doubt. There's always noise every time VMware gets acquired. Someday I want to read the Harvard Business School study that explains why this company can never survive standalone.
But yet generates billions of dollars. I don't know. It's either too appealing or an ugly duckling. But no, you're right. But, let me just be fair. VMware is more than just a hypervisor, right? They've built some great tools. And Tanzu is a perfect example, right? Cloud native kind of DevOps functionality. But we'll have to see. I think there's two things. There's the fact that it was acquired, and then Broadcom acquired it, and what's been their track record in major acquisitions like CA, et cetera. I think we'll have to see how it plays out, but I think it's causing a lot of angst in the market.
One way to think about VMware is the longest running soap opera in IT.
Yes, it is, and it makes for good copy. Mitchell, you were going to say something?
No, I was just going to say, you remember the days like what hypervisor do you use? Right?
Yeah.
It's been around. I mean, we used it in the early 2000s, mid 2000s. But, I think the interesting dilemma for me is, yes, there's a lot of people rushing in to take advantage of, the uncertainty, right, and getting customers to switch. But you're asking customers to switch off of something of which their entire operations are built around, and their infrastructure is built around with vSphere and NSX for the networking, and as you mentioned, Tanzu. You just don't rip those things out and kind of let's switch tomorrow. So it's a big lift to change. Not that you can't, but I have a feeling it's kind of like, the mainframes are going away. No, they aren't. There's still going to be some a lot of workhorse applications are still going to be running on VMware, 5 or 10 years from now. Who knows? At least that's my sense of it. All the panic of it's all going away usually doesn't happen. It does once in a while, but I doubt this is the situation that happens.
To Mitch's point, there's a lot of folks out there that identify themselves as VMware administrators. That's how they got their job. That was the job that they answered. I always feel like aligning yourself too closely with a particular platform is a bad decision long term, because then when bad things happen, they happen to you. So, but those folks are not going away, and they have those skill sets, and a lot of organizations are like, hey, you got to deliver stuff that works with our skill set, because we're not training these guys and we can't find new ones anyway.
Yep. All right. We'll stay tuned on that one. Something else to put on the Techstrong betting site. I think that's going to wrap up today's Techstrong Gang episode. Before we sign off, though, I just want to remind you all, look, Techstrong Gang is just a small sliver of the entire broadcasting schedule of Techstrong TV. And so, when we end here, there'll be probably a slight 30-second break, and then we'll start right in with some of our normal programming. Today on Techstrong TV, I actually had a chance to interview my good friend Jennifer Leggio. Jennifer's been a CMO and COO operations. I know Jennifer 20 years as she's grown in the security world from a PR person all the way up to C-level. She recently just launched her own kind of vehicle called Movable Feast, where she's helping people with go-to-market, as well as helping individuals with leadership, counseling, etc. Great interview. Jennifer has an amazing life story. We go into it a little bit. Check that one out. After that, our own Amanda from Techstrong is here, and she's on a AI Leadership Insights, AI in Accounting interview, which is, again, AI is just disrupting one vertical after the next. Accounting is going to be no different. And Amanda speaks with Suma Chandar from PKF O'Connor Davies. After that, we've got two great sessions from our recently completed AI in Action virtual event. It's Raghu Ravanunatada and Jaime Jorge. You can check them out. And by the way, the entire event is still available on techstrongevents.com. That's AI in Action. And then we end the day with two great double dose of The View with Vizard, with our own Mike Vizard here. Mike's going to talk with Mark Gaffin from Ionix, CEO of Ionix. Great guy. I've interviewed him myself a few times. And then we have Bill Mulligan, who's a community pollinator. Does that make him a bee?
I guess. I'm not quite sure, but he spreads the word.
B is in Bill Mulligan. Okay. And he's going to talk about eBPF community and more. So do check out that one as well. And I think that'll wrap up today's Techstrong TV.
I want to be clear about something. You referred to our normal programming. So is this our abnormal programming?
No. Well, our legacy. Sorry about that. Good pickup. Our legacy programming still remains. We've just, added Techstrong Gang, which is something I've wanted to do from day one. So thank you all for watching. Mike, Mitchell, Amanda, thank you. Hey, you're probably going to catch this on Tuesday. So have a great rest of the week, everyone. I'm Alan Schimmel. I'm out.
Take care, everybody.